In this podcast episode, Andrew Huberman, a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine, delves into the complex world of healthy eating and eating disorders, focusing particularly on anorexia nervosa, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. The discussion spans from the biological and neurological underpinnings of these disorders to the psychological and behavioral aspects, while also addressing the broader concept of what it means to have a healthy relationship with food. Huberman begins by emphasizing that despite the abundance of nutritional advice available, there is no universally defined best way to eat that applies to every individual. Healthy eating is influenced by a myriad of factors, including metabolism, eating frequency, and the psychological relationship one has with food and body composition. He highlights the growing interest in intermittent fasting, explaining it as a practice of restricting food intake to specific windows within the circadian cycle, sometimes extending to multi-day fasts with water and electrolytes. The importance of maintaining electrolyte balance during fasting is underscored, as neurons rely on ions like sodium, potassium, and magnesium to function properly. Research from Sachin Panda's lab at the Salk Institute is cited to illustrate the health benefits of time-restricted feeding, such as improved liver enzymes and insulin sensitivity. However, Huberman stresses that weight management fundamentally depends on the balance between calories consumed and calories burned, regardless of eating patterns. Many people find intermittent fasting easier than constant portion control, but ultimately, no single eating pattern is inherently superior for everyone. Transitioning to clinical eating disorders, Huberman clarifies that these conditions are diagnosable psychiatric disorders with serious health risks, including death. He cautions against self-diagnosis and encourages seeking professional evaluation if symptoms resonate. Eating disorders are deeply influenced by cultural, familial, and societal contexts, but they also have strong biological components. Anorexia nervosa is described as the most dangerous psychiatric disorder, with a high mortality rate due to severe metabolic and physiological consequences such as muscle loss, low heart rate, osteoporosis, and disrupted reproductive function. Contrary to popular belief, the prevalence of anorexia has remained relatively stable over centuries, suggesting a significant biological basis rather than being solely driven by modern societal pressures or media images. Huberman explains the fundamental mechanisms of hunger and satiety, which are regulated by mechanical signals from stomach fullness and chemical signals such as blood glucose levels. These signals are processed in the hypothalamus, a brain region critical for appetite control. Within the hypothalamus, two key neuron types play opposing roles. AGRP neurons stimulate hunger and food-seeking behavior, while PALM-C neurons suppress appetite. Leptin, a hormone secreted by body fat, communicates the body's energy reserves to the brain, suppressing appetite and regulating reproductive hormones. Disruptions in leptin signaling are implicated in disorders like bulimia and binge eating. Evolutionarily, humans are wired to seek and consume food rapidly and abundantly when available, a survival mechanism that can become maladaptive in modern environments with constant food availability. A central insight Huberman shares is that anorexia is not simply a matter of conscious choice or perfectionism, but involves a pathological rewiring of brain circuits related to habit formation and reward. Anorexics develop a hyper-awareness of food's fat content and form rigid habits around avoiding high-calorie foods. These habits become rewarding in themselves, driven by dopamine release, which paradoxically makes food restriction feel pleasurable rather than punishing. This shift from conscious decision-making to reflexive habit execution explains why anorexics often know the dangers of their behavior, yet cannot easily change it. The brain areas responsible for habit formation become tightly coupled with reward systems, reinforcing unhealthy eating patterns. Breaking these habits requires cognitive behavioral therapy that focuses on identifying the triggers and contexts leading to these behaviors, combined with family-based support models that educate and involve loved ones in the recovery process. Another troubling aspect of anorexia is the distorted self-image experienced by sufferers. Huberman references studies from Stanford's Jeremy Balsam's lab showing that anorexics have altered visual perception of their own bodies, often seeing themselves as larger or more flawed than they are. This perceptual distortion is not simply a matter of denial or willful ignorance, but a genuine neurological phenomenon. Encouragingly, as anorexics begin to change their habits and receive appropriate therapy, their self-perception tends to improve alongside behavioral recovery. This highlights the importance of addressing both the neurological and psychological components of the disorder, rather than relying solely on external persuasion or confrontation. In contrast to anorexia, bulimia nervosa and binge eating disorder involve episodes of excessive food intake, often followed by purging behaviors in bulimia. These disorders are characterized by a lack of inhibitory control and heightened impulsivity. Unlike anorexics, individuals with bulimia often feel shame and distress about their behaviors, which are driven by internal compulsions rather than conscious choices. The neurological basis of bulimia involves underactivity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive functions such as planning, impulse control, and evaluating consequences, referred to as duration, path, and outcome analysis. This underactivity leads to poor top-down control over eating impulses. Pharmacological treatments that increase serotonin and dopamine levels, such as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, and certain ADHD medications, can improve impulse control and reduce binge purge cycles. Behavioral therapies are also effective, especially when initiated early, and are most successful when combined with medication. Huberman concludes by framing eating behaviors within a model of decision-making: what we know we should do, what we actually do, and the intervening homeostatic and reward processes that influence behavior. Disruptions in these processes can lead to maladaptive eating patterns seen in disorders. The key takeaway is that knowledge about these mechanisms empowers individuals and clinicians to foster neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through experience and learning. Over time, with appropriate interventions, healthier eating behaviors can become reflexive and sustainable. Huberman emphasizes the importance of compassion and understanding for those suffering from eating disorders, recognizing the profound biological and psychological challenges they face. He encourages a balanced approach to healthy eating that avoids neuroticism and compulsivity, promoting a relationship with food that supports both physical and mental well-being.